our power. And setting aside the differences of your individual pastoral delivery, you represent submission to the will of God. You represent light in the hazardous valleys of darkness. And we are God's properties. And you are not only the builders and maintainers of men and women, but you are rebuilders and rehabbers of souls that have become in need of rehabbing. But I'd like to ask every one of you in this room, and I would like to ask every member of the pastoral community in view of this to answer this question. If you are the trees of faith in your community, what fruit have you borne? What fruit is grown from your tree?
Come on.
See, so I'm speaking to you as a person outside the cloth. I'm the man, having letters without, having not letters but being learned. And I'm coming to you and I'm saying to you today, and I'm honest enough to tell you that in the eyes of the people, the image of the church is something that is in vast need of improvement. It's in great need of improvement. The church is considered a failure in the maintenance of the economics of our community, and now we see the outright moral decline of our community. And that's happening on your watch, on your watch, on your watch, and on your watch.
Come on.
So how do we get that correct? We live in a time where people are not just cynical about God, they're cynical about your value as representatives of God. They make jokes about it. Everybody applaud and want to stand up when you come in the room, but when you're out of the room, they laugh and they cracking jokes.
Yeah.
Nobody's taking it seriously anymore. And that's why you can operate in a world right now where everybody, you can put up a yes or no question as it relates to faith on the board right now, as we do every day in Facebook, and it comes out in news and in these different reports. But nobody seems to agree on anything, yet we all got Christ's teachings, right? How is it that nobody can agree on whether or not somebody deserves prosecution for a crime that they committed? How come nobody can seem to agree on the simplest of moral questions? Why is it that friends are being lost every day and friendships are being broken up over politics and news stories and celebrity gossip every day? So I'm asking you again, what fruit have you borne? These are your followers. These are your the people who watch you and come to see you every Sunday. Clergy that are making these mistakes, that are out here offending people and breaking up friendships and losing that status that they have with one another. But the problem is that the people, these sheep are not being fed by the they're not being fed. These flocks are not being fed by the shepherds. Everybody wants something greater, but you have to be able to speak and instill something in people. But what we have now is a void in the absence of the substance of what people are hoping for. They're looking for something. They're looking for development. They're looking for growth. And pastors now are the gatekeepers of political influence in our community and the recipients of political favor. And so now I and we are looking to you to be able to release that connectivity back to the community so that we all can benefit from that connectivity flowing back to the people and through the economic engagement of the church. So I'll talk about this first on two fronts. This is politics first. Jesus, brother mentioned it a little bit earlier, he kind of alluded to that, but Jesus was not a friend of the governments of his day. He was not. Did he get an award from the governor? Did he get a call from the kings of his day and say, hey, let us come up and give you an award at the house of the king of the time that you're in? Did he? Or was he an enemy?
Come on.
But why was he an enemy? Because he was giving the people something that others did not want them to have. But what have you done in that respect today? What are you giving people that has been denied to them outside of your effort? What fruit have been born from your tree? So when people are running for office now for the first time, the 10th time, the 20th time, whether they're a village trustee, a mayor, or a U.S. president, as it relates to black voters, they start their quest within the church.
Yep.
Why is that? It's not just because you are the gatekeepers that have a congregation full of people that they can come up and talk to or address, but why do they want your endorsement? Why do they want your endorsement? Why do they want your endorsement? There's a reason for that. But the fact is that you have more power in our community than business owners
That's
do.
right.
And their numbers have gone down while your numbers have gone up.
Right. Right.
There are more churches in our community, you know, as a member of the executive board of the SBAC, we lobby on a nonpartisan basis for the benefit of small business owners. And one of those more recent lobbies that we did that was signed into law last year by the former governor was something, repeal, or not a repeal, but a change to the Liquor Control Act of 1934. Let me give you an example of something. This law stated that a business that sold alcohol even as a secondary product could not be open within 1,000 feet of a school, church, and so on and so forth, right, without this exemption. So if somebody wanted to come next door and open up an entertainment facility and a restaurant next door to this facility that even served beer and wine as a secondary item, you had to go get the approval of the entire state legislature to do that. And that was on the books since 1934. Wow. The unique challenge in that is that if you go to Roseland, Inglewood, and some of our other communities, storefront churches are basically blocking, through that law, are blocking the entry of formidable business opportunities. Now I know that as a church, you don't want to preach that you condone the consumption of alcoholic beverages, but it is a reality of the time that we live in. And I'll tell you why other church leaders know that. Because I was in Springfield in the office of a senator who told us that the people who were filing these exemptions with the state the most were churches who were starting to need that as a secondary source of revenue. And they're not just in Chicago, they're in Wheaton, they're all over the state, they're downstate Illinois. So they come to you for your endorsement, and they want you to be the one to get us to pay attention to them. And after the election today, when the runoff is getting ready, they're going to be calling you, asking for your support. They're going to be saying that, well, the one you went for last time, they're on board with us now, so come on over here. See, I'm okay with that happening. The problem is what happens from what happens. What are you doing with the favor that gets carried when you make that endorsement?
Awesome.
Or are you what the community believes you are and have sold us under the river? That's just what a lot of people think. And I'm not saying that I hope it doesn't offend anybody, but if it does, then maybe you deserve it. I don't know. But that's not, as much for just, again, the people in this room as the people that might be watching this later. Something is not happening. There's a disconnect somewhere. So if economically, it was stated that the church, the black church, brings in roughly $12 to $13 billion a year. Now we know that there's an expense to running a successful congregation. We understand that. But a lot of people, when you ride through our neighborhoods and see 5, 6 empty houses on the block, and at the end of that block is a house of God, there's a problem. And that's not just on 1 block, 2 blocks, that's 10, 20 blocks in this city.
Right.
So if this is what we have been praying, if our prayer has been correct and has not been ignored by the God of our worship, how is this happening?
Right.
See, because it's really about the instruments of man and how we deal with what God has given us in the way of opportunity that causes this to happen. So when somebody comes to you and he says, well, I'm running for mayor of Chicago and I'm looking for your support, are you looking for the support that fills your coffers and edifies this edifice? Or are you looking for a greater benefit for the community at large? It's easy to see that our community is in a shambles, and activists are in an uproar, and with good reason. Everybody seems to know the problem, that everybody is missing what I seem to believe is an obvious answer. And that's what I came to talk to you here about today, is doing it ourselves. I'm not talking about just, oh yeah, we need some jobs. See, that's what happens, right? They come and they say, well, we're about to build a new so-and-so over here, and you got members of the congregation, we'll give you the input on the jobs. You'll be able to call, tell your uncles, aunties, whoever you need, they come get jobs. So you become a part and get co-opted into a patronage politics, into patronage politics. And you become a part of it. You become a part of the game. So some of the biggest churches in Chicago are in the worst neighborhoods. How is that? Is God ignoring our prayers? Are we not praying for better for our people each and every Sunday? That's because faith without works is dead. And if your teaching is empty on Sunday, as it relates to these issues, then the people are not going to leave knowing what to do.
Come on.
Because they've been validated, you've been validated by the government as the leaders of our community. So they'll listen to you before they'll listen to me as a business leader.
That's right.
But if you and I are not working together, then the benefit cannot get passed down. I don't expect you to know what to do when $1 billion opportunity zone comes to your community. I don't expect you to know what to do, except to call somebody like me.
Yeah.
Call somebody like a developer like a Leon Walker or Moses Hall. Work with real estate professionals in your community like myself. I'm an agent with EXP Realty, Hirsch Network Real Estate, brokered by EXP Realty. We can help with those types of opportunities. There's other real estate professionals. Hell, go to my competition. Go to someone. But talk to these professionals in the community about the opportunities that are in the community so that we can leverage. Okay, so I would rather say that it should have been that they should be talking to the business leaders all along. I don't like the fact that they go to the clergy first. And it's because of what I told you just a minute ago, because that Jesus was not a friend of the government of his day. And in my opinion, if you're teaching what really is in that book that you talk about, they would never want to talk to you no way. They really never had nothing to say to you, but hey, y'all cool over there, we're going to leave y'all alone and let y'all do y'all thing, right? But when they can co-opt you and they can leverage and maneuver opportunities around you by giving you the kibbles and bits of jobs and accommodations, that's how it works. But not until you come and you engage the business community will we start to see this benefit. And I'm not just talking about jobs, I'm talking about strategic business establishment, restaurants, coffee shops, entertainment centers, real estate development, technology, and co-working spaces, just to name a few. And I'm not asking you to be a real estate developer, but to work with the developers, to work with entrepreneurs both inside and outside the body of the church. Allow people in my industry to work with you on building the new and affordable homes, the shopping centers. Impress the political leaders who seek your support to lend the benefit of their office to these professionals who are ready and willing to rebuild Black Chicago. It is among your duties to prepare the people for what's coming. The brother was talking about the future and innovation. How are you going to deal with automation? Do you know what's going to happen when the jobs get swept out by machines and artificial intelligence? You're going to have to own something.
Come on.
That's right.
Come on.
I'm in the real estate model that I'm in part because they made us all owners. We all own stock in the brokerage we represent. That matters to me. That means something to me. It means something to me to be able to own a piece of property across the street or in your neighborhood, in my neighborhood, or wherever. It matters. We have not been focused on ownership of anything. And in the rest of my presentation today, I'm going to show you how we can get ownership. And this is not a 20-year track, it's not a 50-year track, it's a now track. Because what we need to do and all of the tools are there. And you won't even have to pay for it. It's been said that politics without economics is symbol without substance. And just like faith without works is dead, business in our community is being done by people who are not invested in it. We walk by and I hate to keep bringing up Inglewood, but I grew up in Auburn Gresham. Yeah. There were no Black business owners in my neighborhood that I can recall that owned a real viable business. The sandwich shop, the liquor store, the Walgreens, the shoe store, everything was owned by somebody else. I didn't grow up with examples of Black entrepreneurship around me. It wasn't there. But we have an opportunity to start to create that. And what you're seeing in the world around you is a world that is forcing you to have to answer that question. The world is forcing you to answer it. So when the police are beating people and killing people, when racism and segregation is at its height and its tension is growing through social media and all over the country, what else can you do but turn inward? What else can you do? But now you look inward and realize that there's nothing there. It's hollow. And if everybody got up and left our community today, we'd be dead tomorrow. Yeah. Nothing. Can you imagine that? with all that we've accomplished as a people in this country. And nobody's kept it from us. We kept it from ourselves by not investing in ourselves. So there's people who say, well, we want the mayor and the governor and the president to handle that. It's not their job. It's not their job. The governor, the president, they're not local. They're not on 100th Street. They're not in Jeffrey Manor, and they're not coming. The mayor's not coming to Jeffrey Manor, and you're lucky if your alderman comes.
It's true.
It's going to be up to you to figure that out. But the good news is we live in a time where it's never been more possible than it is now. All of the knowledge and wisdom that they denied us, not just about our own people, but spiritual knowledge that you might have been seeking in your younger days under the cloth, the Apocrypha, the Dead Sea. You can go and read all of that right now from the comfort of your phone and the chair you're sitting in. So what's the excuse that we have not to do better when all the instruments that allow us to do better are right in front of us? Theology, the church, business need to work together. We need to stop pointing fingers at one another, and we need to start working together. The instrument for us to do that is here, but it has to be for the community to take hold of it. It has to be presented strategically and with imagination. It has to be something that people can sink their teeth into. Respectfully speaking, this is not another building fund that I'm going to come talk to you about, right? It's another one of the great jokes, you know, the building fund. We're going to build a new annex to the church. We want everybody to donate money and put that money in. And then we build it, or maybe we don't, right? But at the end of the day, nobody benefits but the church. The community at large don't benefit because you ain't stopping nothing. They still selling dope right down the street. Pastor, when's the last time you walked down there and shook those men's hand and embraced them as brothers and invited them into your house?
All right.
Instead of driving past them, pointing your finger at them, and then walking in here, locking the door. So when I told you you don't have to pay for it, I mentioned it. Here's how. There's legislation on the books that our organization worked on and passed a few years ago. It's called Equity Crowdfunding. And it is the means by which we can strategically rebuild our community and have the church become a catalyst of economic development that can lead our people into the future. And how is that? Because what I'm going to show you right now is something that's been available to us for 19, it's been available to us for solidly 2 years now in Illinois. But most of you probably don't know about it. Because your political leaders, while they're talking about fixing violence with job creation, they're not talking about this. You know why? Because this is what empowers you to own your own community. The Opportunity Zone Fund that everybody's chasing this money now, it's good. Because it's going to give people with a lot of money to come and buy all these abandoned structures that you refuse to buy. And it's going to repurpose that, and it's going to renew neighborhoods, and then you're going to cry foul and say it's gentrification. But gentrification, I live in Bronzeville. Gentrification, everybody's upset about it, but we've lived in Bronzeville for 30 years, 40 years, free and clear. Nobody giving a damn about it, and we did nothing with it. Now, as soon as somebody else starts moving in, seeing the value of living 5 minutes from the lakefront, you want to get upset. You cry foul, a white man come and take your neighborhood. That's not what that is. If you owned your property, you'd embrace that because they're raising the value of your property. While Duke is over here bringing it down. So we have to think about what we want. And we have to connect our activity to our true interests. And we have to stop catering in Cowtown, if you will, to people who have a lesser approach to this. So what I'm going to tell you right now is going to seem very remedial to all of you. It's very simple. And it fits. There is nothing that I'm going to say to you in here that conflicts in any way with what you've learned in the church throughout your lifetime. I guarantee you. It falls in direct coincidence to what you learned. Equity crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a practice of funding a project or venture by raising small amounts of money from a large number of people. It's the building fund. It's the same thing. There's no real difference in that. conceptually. There's 4 main types of crowdfunding campaigns. You have donation-based campaigns like Kickstarter and GoFundMe, where somebody is donating money to you to go get something. A reward-based campaign like Kickstarter, where they say, well, if you invest in my new t-shirt line, I'll send you a free t-shirt. Debt-based crowdfunding, where 5 of you up front, up here, 5 of you take $2,000 apiece and lend $10,000 to a business owner that needs it. That's conceptually what that is, and it's structured as a debt. You don't own his business, but he owes you that money. And then you have it where there's equity, where everybody shares in it. So supposing the church decided to build a restaurant next door, you could raise that money from the people right inside this community. Everybody will own a piece of it, and will help you to overcome 5 of the greatest impediments that exist to building and sustaining black business. So anybody can go through one of these campaigns. You can get started by looking at local internet portals. This is all done online. And there are state-approved portals where you can go and look at things that have been offered for investment. But now I'm going to be straight with you here. Nobody has taken the reason why you've never heard of all of this. Matter of fact, I'll ask, has anybody in the room heard of this? Well, y'all heard about it because of me, y'all. Y'all there's a couple of people, right? But here's the thing. The reason why they're not talking about it is because if once you get a hold of this information, it all becomes on you. But what has happened is we have not strategically attacked it. And politicians are not saying, okay, well here, you guys, go do it yourself. They want to continue to hang you up on the belief that they're going to do it for you. So give me 4 more years. Give me 4 more years. You know, the last 2 people were playing around in the public, blocking everything. So I need 4 more years. Then I need 4 more years. Then I need 4 more years. Then you don't like this guy, wait 4 more years and vote him out and get somebody. And then we stay in this perpetual cycle. After this election today, you into another cycle for the general election and the runoff. Then you into presidential politics. Then when that's over, you'll be back to another gubernatorial election. You stay in a perpetual cycle of electing someone. They stay also, though, on the flip side of that, they stay in a perpetual cycle of needing something from you. Mm-hmm. So now you have to take what it is they need and make a commodity of it. That vote is a commodity, and the members of the pastoral community that understand that are the ones that they call first. It ain't just the biggest congregation, it's the one who's passionate, who can deliver that message, and who can do that commercial on WVON in the morning, right? So some of this stuff, I'm going to skip past because I want to really, really deal with the principles of what we're talking about here. The power of equity crowdfunding can best be realized in situations where community-based business work to raise a significant portion of the amount directly from the community that it's in. That restaurant next door that we build, if it cost us $500,000 to build that, the idea would be that we would want to raise 20, 30, 40% or more of that money from within a 5 to 10 mile radius of the location, what I'll call the patronage range of the location, and I'll tell you why. Because in these 5 impediments that we have and that I was able to figure out from a poll that I asked people and just to kind of get their concern, they talk about patronage, right? So we build a business in a community and nobody comes out and supports it, right? But what happens if the people in the neighborhood own a piece of it? If you got a restaurant over here, you serve breakfast on Sunday, and you invested $1,000, $500, or even $100 in that restaurant, where are you going to go for your Sunday morning breakfast? Anyone?
Mm-hmm. Right
To that restaurant? Mm-hmm. Am I right? Come on,
right.
talk to me.
That's right.
I need you to do that.
That's right. That's right.
Where are you going to tell people to go?
To that restaurant.
Where you going to take selfies at and post that and tag the location at? Your restaurant, right? Not Tao, not Mastro's downtown, Gibson's. They don't need your advertising, trust me, right? But yours and one the community owns. Now, access to capital is a big issue, but this resolves that because you don't need a bank to pull it off. All you need is the hearts of the people to do this. The law that governs this is already on the books. So what I'm telling you about is not some pie in the sky concept that I'm gonna go and fight to get past the law. That's already been done. A couple of years ago now. So they said community support is a problem. Like I said before, you raise 20% or more of that money, you solve that problem of community support, and you're solving the access to capital issue by default. Okay? Because this is a capital acquisition move. Customer service was also said to be a tough thing in our community, right? In terms of, these were the question that I asked and the way that question was framed are what do you see as 3 to 5 impediments to building and sustaining black business in our community? Customer service was very high on that list, saying that businesses in our community often suffer from poor customer service because they don't have enough money to adequately train those employees from the start. New businesses have a lot of marketing to do for their business, and Equity Crowdfunding is a marketing campaign by default. So while you're pushing to raise the money for the restaurant, you're essentially marketing the restaurant itself. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. Now, from a customer service standpoint, instead of someone opening that little restaurant, even if it's just, I don't care if it's the little shop that just sells sandwiches and donuts and coffee, if they raise the money right to go into that business, they can put the money into the things that they need to start that business on the right footing from the start. See, my whole thing is not just about building black business, it's about building black businesses that convey adequate value to you as a consumer, that earn the support, the patronage of their community versus this welfare expectation that we have, this entrepreneurial welfare that we want. Hey, I'm open for business. Y'all need to come and support me, support black business. We selling t-shirts for the fellowship. It doesn't work that way. What's the value to me? Because what that tells the business owner is that, hey, man, you ain't got to focus on your decor. You don't have to focus on service. We owe you support. And so his mind is in a welfare state. The same way that our people are in a welfare state, waiting on the people that put us in this condition to come and drag us out of it. Entitlement. Oftentimes, new business owners in the community feel entitled to that support from you. But what happens when you walk in that store and he don't know that you just invested $1,000 in there? It's different. His mindset has to change. Because now he can't just blow you off. He has to make sure that everybody in there gets treated fairly because these are the people who invested in him. That's different. Do you all agree with that?
Absolutely.
Did that would change somebody's mind? Security. I always talk about this, you at the store down the street, and somebody come running out the store with a 6-pack of beer or something right now. Nobody does anything. You know why? Because in their mind, they're not stealing from us. They're stealing from the Arab guy that live in Oakwood somewhere. They're not stealing from us. Man, go get your money, black. That's how we treat it. But check this out. What happens when all of us own a piece of that store? When you come out running, what are we going to do now? Trip them, right? Trip them. Don't trip them while you're running. And that's not even something you're going to have to teach people how to do. That's going to be an automatic response when you own something. It's to protect it. So the lack of security that we have in our community is indicative of the fact that we own nothing in it. So we're not making sacrifices to secure it. So I'm not going to call the police when something happened to you. Because I don't own your house, you don't own your damn house. Excuse my language. Nobody's going to protect nothing that they don't own. And we don't own our community, so we just go walk around and throw trash everywhere. Garbage can sitting right there. You ain't even trying to make the shot. You just threw it out the car. We've all seen it. That's because we don't have any pride. That's because we don't have any pride from owning nothing. But guess what? Those people who are void of that pride are coming into your house on Sunday. So why don't they have that pride? What are you doing, Pastor, to instill that pride in them? What are you giving them? See, you can feed them well when it comes to the word, but if they can't walk out and let the substance of what they hope for be made evident in their lives, then you got nothing for those people. There's no substance
is
coming
good.
from this house. No substance. So everybody feel empty. They walk right here. They walk past here. There was a time, even in my worst days as a young man, I would never walk past a church smoking a cigarette. Man, you walk across the street, don't throw that cigarette out in front of the church. Boy, something wrong with you? Now we got no respect. You walk past the church, literally showing the church your backside.
Yep.
Your pants off. That's the world we're living in. But then, nobody wants to say, young man, pull them up. How many of you pastors here and on this video watching, how many of you are riding in your neighborhood, pulling up on the corner and say, hey man, what can I do to help y'all?
Yes, sir.
What can I do to help you, young man? What can I do to help you, 30-something-year-old man with nothing? Who was raised in the church, who no longer believes?
Come on.
My God.
And talking about this, I'm talking about what's called reverse engagement. We call it the black hand effect. You all watch The Godfather, you remember that character, the black hand, right? And I always love the part where he comes in because it teaches you a very powerful lesson when you look at it. And so what you watch is, you watch a young man, a young Vito, who really ain't paying no attention to the system. I'm just gonna go out here and get mine. I know who this dude is, but I ain't really studying him. So now what happens is, because this guy know everything, he comes to you and says, hey man, you out here getting money and you ain't asked for my help. I need to get my beak wet a little.
Yeah.
In business, they tell you, a banker will tell you that the best time to borrow money is when you do not need it.
Yep.
And the best time to get money from someone who you seek it from is when you prove to them that you don't need them for it. So when you go into for a loan for a car, for a house, they ask you for a list of your assets and liabilities, right? They want to know that you don't need it, because a person who needs it is much less likely to handle it in such a way that makes it payable back to him. So my argument here in reverse municipal engagement is that if we use equity crowdfunding and build our communities and start building viable businesses with our money, then they will flood us with their money, because their business is built on us taking their money. So in other words, you stop asking for it, they're like, hey, hey. You know, it's like the girlfriend. You're in an argument, you stop talking. You know how y'all like to play that little game, you know, with your wife or whatever. I ain't gonna say nothing. Just be quiet. Matter of fact, it's a sales principle. You present the prices and be quiet.
Be quiet.
The first one talks, lose.
Yeah. That's true. That's it.
So you take it off the table. It's the takeaway. We say, okay, you don't want that off? Okay, cool. I'm going to take it away from you. Now the person comes back like, wait. So as soon as you take your begging off the table, then they'll be coming, be begging you to take what they denied you before.
Right.
Oh, we didn't have no money. Oh, well, that's how they can give it to Amazon, because Amazon is a self-sustaining business. It's going to bring 25,000 jobs. That's why. So when you wonder why, how come they can give all that money to them and they can't put the money in the school, because the school ain't making no damn money. Excuse my expression, Bishop. It's about money. It's about a contribution of value. It's about a return on the investment that they've taken away from this community. But then again, why would they invest in a community that you want to invest in yourself? And the easiest way for them to know that is for them to be able to say that I gave you a tool that you refused to use. I gave you a fishing rod, young man, and you didn't fish. You preferred to steal and to beg. But that's not the way of the church, is it? How much money can you raise? So I'm going to show you what you're missing. Up to $1 million a year without audited financials. Meaning that you can start a business today.
That's
And
great.
if you can show its viability, you can raise that money tomorrow. If you can capture the hearts of the people with it. If you got something that makes sense, the unicorns that they invest in Silicon Valley. You know where those started? They started in kitchen tables in your neighborhood right now. Your children are playing with those games all day, developing ideas that can lead us into the future. But instead of us investing in that, we make them subject to the same racist system that oppresses kind of fools are we? $40 million a year with audited financials, an existing business. It's perfect for that. You got 2 stores, this is how you get 6. This is how you get 8 to 10. This is how you build chain status. This is how you go from 2 cafes to 10. Now, as a consumer in the community, you can invest as little as $100, as much as $5,000 in any project per year. So put it in perspective. 3 people sitting here, these 3 people all have businesses. I can invest up to $5,000 as a non-accredited investor. I can invest up to $5,000 in each one of them each year. So now, as a non-accredited investor, I own fractions of 3 businesses in my community, and I now have what we would call a diversified portfolio, community-based investments. That's never been possible before, but it's possible right now. Everyone is ignoring it.
Sure.
No limit for accredited investors, diversified investments, strategic partnerships, and equity and debt offerings, meaning that I can raise that $1 million and then give everybody a fractional piece of equity, or I can just say, I want to pay you all that $1 million back at X percentage on what you put in. Does that make sense to everybody? I'll take some questions after it's over. Auburn Gresham, where I grew up, 47,000 residents. So when we were lobbying for this law to get passed, I saw this instantly. The people who I've studied historically taught the idea of everybody pooling their resources and putting money. This is nothing new, what I'm talking about. But that's also why it's so frustrating that it's being ignored, because it's really an age-old principle. More than an age, it's ages old. The idea of everybody just putting something in that benefits everybody. But the problem is, nobody wants to share their ownership. When you're dealing with a disunified people like we are, it's very difficult to make things like this happen, except that we become the example. So if you want to know what I'm doing when I give up that event later and I stop doing that, I'm going here to start becoming an example to the people of what it is that I've been talking about, to stand on what I've been talking about, and not just be the purveyor of empty promises to people. 47,000 residents. 10% of those people, 4,700 people, invest $2,000, $200. You get the math of this, is very easy to accomplish, but what I want you to focus on is the grid. So let's say you went from 67 to 76, from Damon to Racine. All through here, there are shuttered storefronts, dry cleaners. Did you all know that the Chinese people who own all the dry cleaners in our neighborhood are having a problem passing those businesses to their children? So a lot of them have been for sale, laundromats and dry cleaners, because their children are now, they took our money, put their children in technology, and now their children don't want to come back and sit in the hood all day and deal with us. Oh yeah, brother. Yeah. That's real. But here's what that is though. That's not, that makes us a little angry. But the idea is that it's an opportunity now.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for us to own back what should have been ours in the first place.
Yes, sir.
Man, that's good.
That's a lot of renovation.
They're all over this neighborhood. So if we own them, here's how that works. All I need you to do, Reverend, all I need you to do is back it. And say that as a principle, equity crowdfunding makes sense for us. The only thing we need to do is have business owners bring viable plans. It's all government regulated, so it's vetted. So you can't, this is not a throw it up against the wall and see what sticks type of thing. It's gotta be legit, and it's gotta be real. But it also, that forces us to step our game up and to bring it for real. Somebody come to you and be like, man, Roger, Bishop Phillips, I'm down, I got a business idea, man. I need about $20,000, take off and do my thing. And he might be absolutely right. But if he don't have that on paper, and it's not in a plan that you can sink your teeth into, you're gonna have to tell him no. And then he's gonna be throwing his middle fingers up at you and upset because you didn't believe in his dreams, but what he forgot was that all you need to do is be prepared. It's got to be meritorious. It can't be just because my cousin good at doing hair, she need to open a salon. Do she know how to manage it? Can she prove that capacity? If we get serious about business, business will happen seriously for us. So if you were to build, if we strategically went and surveyed the vacant spots and said, okay, we're going to do the dry cleaners, the restaurant, cafe. Now, we want to raise that money from inside that sphere in that patronage range. So that now you've got guaranteed revenue. So it ain't no more, what if we open and don't nobody come? No, they're invested in it. They're coming. Totally different, man. This is something that changes literally overnight. You know how you go out and you buy a new car? You, as a matter of fact, it really ain't even yours. You pay in the bank. They bought it for you, from you, for the dealership, or from the dealership for you, and now you owe them money. Let somebody scratch that car. It's my car, man. What you doing? Fights. Anything that's yours that somebody encroaches upon, you got something for them, right? But that's why if we don't own, we get nothing. I want to go to my point about gentrification for a minute, right? And how you profit from the inevitable. Bronzeville has this project called Parade of Homes. 42 houses that are being built between 39th and 45th from Calumet to Indiana. 42 houses. These houses are all in the range of 500,000, 600,000, and so on. So everybody's screaming bloody murder. It's gentrification, and they're coming to take over our neighborhood, and so on and so forth. Okay, fine. If that's the case, how about we do this? If you also drive down 43rd, 39th Street, you see empty, shuttered businesses. Now, I did a little homework, and I called a loan officer that I know, and I said, well, how much income does a family need to afford a house? You know, for about $600,000. The total amount of money that we talked about is somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 million plus of income coming into that small patch of land. And what that tells me is that if we open the shops and the stores that they patronize, that dry cleaners they gotta go to, that happens to be for sale right on King Drive, by the way, for $1 million. Another brother opened a cigar bar right here. You got Sip and Save coffee shops down here. You got the Green Line running through. You got everything you need for a vibrant community to grow. But instead of us focusing on saying, you know what? $10 million worth of money coming in the neighborhood, we put a business, let us make man, let us build business in our community. We're so busy complaining, we can't even see the opportunity that lies around that. So in other words, come on to my community, but you're gonna have to buy your goods and services from me if you want to do that. So now he looks at the community and say, well, you got me in or I'm out, right? It's different. You have to be focused on ownership. This is a satellite map view of that same area, right? So you have the Forum Theater in Bronzeville, you got new townhouses being built over here. Look at all that vacant land. I want you to think about this. You always hear them say real estate is location. You know that standing in this spot right here, you're midway, literally midway between Lakeshore Drive and the Dan Ryan, and you're about a 7-minute walk from sitting on the beach on 39th Street at the lakefront. There's a lot of value to living in Bronzeville. It ain't just because somebody wants your house. It's value to living there. The location is valuable. You can get to downtown or Hyde Park in less than 10 minutes from that spot. It's a desirable place to live. It has old graystone castles that our ancestors built right there.
That's right.
That we ignored for a very long time. So when somebody says, oh, I could buy that house for $700,000, and the same house costs $2 million in the Prairie District, why wouldn't he come there? It makes sense. So it's not a bunch of people in the room with an evil plan to take over your neighborhood. It's market forces that drive that, and other things that drive that are not so nefarious. But it's allowed because we didn't do it ourselves. It's the only way somebody could be under the threat of gentrification because you don't own nothing. So instead of teaching about how to keep them out, how about talking about how to keep us in? This is how we keep ourselves in. There's examples all over the country of people that have been doing this to build business. Wow. I'll give you a mic. Companies in DC, a grilled cheese truck raised $200,000. Fast food company raised $400,000. Another company raised $300,000. These are over limited amounts of time with the average investor putting in about $800. At $100 a person, you could be on minimum wage and own a piece of your own neighborhood.
You sure could.
And again, when automation comes and sweep you out, because of that $15 minimum wage, that ain't gonna be worth $15 in 5 years. Then what? Then what? So here's what, the job creation model. We'll show you something very simple here. A couple years ago, a couple partners of mine and I, we developed something called the David Sons of Chicago. This is not an active campaign currently, but I use it still to show you the possibility of what can be done with the most prevalent resource that we have in our neighborhood. There are over 80,000 vacant properties in Cook County. The opportunity, the jobs we need are in our community. They're under our feet. We walking past them and putting out cigarettes on them every day. Sample real estate transaction here showed a 3-flat building on the west side that a friend of mine did with a $44,000 profit. And I'm going to speed up a little bit for the sake of time. But what if we take a property like that where every one of these trades is relevant and then we hire those trades locally? So now our plan was that we would hire each of these contractors, right? But we would put a demand on them that they take 2 people from inside the community that the project is being done in so that they can become the rebuilders of these communities. And now they can take pride in being the ones rebuilding. You think a guy cares about an abandoned house and all he's seen walking out of there is Mexicans and Polish people every day that he know he don't own? No, he doesn't care about that. Yes, he's going to come steal your lights. Of course he is. Because we only defend what we own. But in this scenario, look what you're doing. You got 9 businesses. Those trades, those are 9 local business owners who are using 19 skilled workers and bringing on 13 newly trained unskilled workers to a job site. That's for one property. Real estate professionals also get paid for these projects. So in one full rehab project, one, like this 3-flat building where you need literally almost every trade, you got 17 businesses eating, 19 skilled workers, 13 unskilled workers in a project that was funded by the community itself. Does that make sense to everybody here? Y'all understand the power of that. You're promoting homeownership. The 3-unit building was sold to a veteran who got 100% financing. He lives in 1 unit and rents the other 2, and now he lives rent positive. He's getting paid to live there. This is created by the proper use of equity crowdfunding as a law, and this is what I'm talking about can be engineered by, validated by, supported by, value expressed by the clergy, by the church. If you could tell people to go vote for a daily, you can tell somebody, and they'll listen to you if you tell them that they need to support ideas like this. And again, I need you to understand that you are not, nobody's asking you to be the one doing it, but you're going to support the efforts of other people who engage in these projects. And if you need to do that, I'll be happy to come to your house and talk to your people about this and how they can do it and how they can get involved in it and they can be the presenters of these projects to the community and start to help us rebuild this community from within. So in this, it's a simple statement that I always make from the simplest of realizations. And I say that there are enough of us, enough black people. We got $1 trillion in spending income every year, spending power. There are enough of us doing well enough to build enough to help the rest of us. Yeah. And
yes.
I want you all to say that with me real quick. There are enough of us doing well enough to build enough
to build enough
to help the rest of us.
to help the rest of us.
The responsibility for job creation, for economic opportunity and investment in our community is ours. And when we take that up, when you take that up, when you become the guardian of the church in the house that God gave you, and you become a great steward of what's been given you, and do all of that which is required of you, who's been given so much, then we'll all advance to a much brighter day of fellowship. Thank you very much, Bishop Johnson, for having me here today, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to me.
Does anybody have any questions? Here, if you just do some Q&A, because you're
Yes.
going to get a lot of questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I totally agree with everything that you said. My question is, because we were set up to fail
Right.
by the administration of this city through the process of gentrification. When I was in seminary, I read a book about the city of Chicago called The American Pharaoh. And it talked about how Senior Daly and his staff chose over a 50-year period to build prisons in our community, which we called the projects. And then after they built those cinder block and steel buildings just like a prison, and put all of our people that came to the city through the spoil from the south into those cinder block and steel buildings.
Right.
And then tear them down in the 50-year mark from the beginning when they planned it to gentrify the very areas that you talk about, so they could come in, buy the property
Right.
when it was cheap, and then overprice the property so we can't get in. And with that being said, how do we get in?
How do you get in? Okay. So here's what I'll tell you about that, and thank you for that comment. That's a worthy observation. What I'll tell you about that is this. That is a trick that we fell for, that my expectation is that now we have overcome, we have the tools to overcome. There's a daily, for instance, now, there's two things that have to change. The mentality of the people from consumers to owners, just from the perspective of the house you live in, right? Own the space that you live in and occupy. It's very simple, right? The impediments that were once there for us to do that are being removed. There's a lot of people who provide professional services so let's say you got a family down the street who's renting a house that they live in when they can own it. They're paying $1,000 a month, $1,100 a month to somebody, when they could be paying a mortgage of $600,000 or $700,000, or $100 a month, excuse me. That individual has a responsibility to pay attention to what's going on around him and make that move and become an owner in his community, so he cannot be extracted out of his community without a profit to himself. So if you was living in Bronzeville for 30 years and you own a 3-flat gray stone house right now, and you own it free and clear because you've been living there for so long, oh, you can get good money for that right now. You can either sell it at a profit, or you can reorganize it so that you can renovate it and increase the value even further. So a part of that is educating ourselves through that part. Now, I know what you mean about them coming. So now where the Robert Taylor homes once stood, they're building other things that are a part of that cycle. But here's the deal. If somebody gives you a house to live in for $10 a month for 50 years, and you don't do anything to improve your condition, whose fault is it? Not to be cynical, Apostle, and I say that respectfully, but we have a responsibility for what we pay attention to now in the age of information, where we got enough technology at this table to run a university. So it's the times that we live in and call for us to step up and do more, and we got to pay more attention, would be my charge to anybody in any of your congregations. Are we going to spend our time arguing about R. Kelly and Smollett, or are we studying how to build for ourselves? That's a responsibility that we have in that.
I've got a part two. Now we just that what you just addressed deals with the individual. mindset. Okay, we have churches within those communities.
Yes.
We got Fellowship on the west side of the Dan Ryan, we got Omega, we got Progressive, we can name all the churches that are in that area that are hundreds of years old. When you bring all of them together, you're talking about thousands of years of religion just in that area. But nobody has stepped out of the church, and the money's in the community. Stepped out of the church, and I'm talking to my pastoral colleague, and be able to grab hold of the knowledge that you're giving to us now, that they failed to get the same knowledge back then to be able to do what you're talking to do. What happened?
They got rocked to sleep into believing that the mayoral engagement of the pastors in those churches were enough to support their needs from those leaders.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So whether it was the daily, the second daily, or any of them, when they come into church and you're congregating in the church and he up here hugging and hand slapping with pastor and pastor is endorsing him, it's our belief, and rightly so, that when he gets in office, he's going to take care of things that are important to us. But what also happens is that in that act, we are reduced back into a state of welfare, of the idea of what someone is going to do for you. So again, the reversal of the mentality to one of ownership is the corrective action that we got to take, because it's only then that you will defend not just the physical space, but the mental space that we sit in. So now, that's not, owners and consumers don't act the same way. It's a different mentality when a community owns. The reason why you don't see people in Chinatown lobbying for nothing. They own everything in their neighborhood, and that reverse municipal effect is true for them. Because everybody's coming in and saying, hey, what y'all need? Because they're not protesting for nothing.
Yeah.
You want to know why the Latinos passed us up? Because they own their community. Go over there, look at every store. They own them all. Or they have an interest in that. So until we do that, it's going to be very difficult for us to overcome what we've been set against. But the church has been used as a tool of our demise in that respect, because it has essentially put people to sleep and made us believe that something was coming for us that we were not going to attack and go get ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Brother, we've been talking about this for years. Is crowdfunding, I've got a two-pronged question. Is crowdfunding available in other states?
Yes.
And for example?
Yeah, Florida. Yes, it is. So it's available on both a federal level, which has a different set of rules, and then several states have interstate rules for it, and I believe Florida is one of them.
Okay, all right. I'd like to get that information from you. Here's something that, and I'm glad you opened that, that dialogue, that narrative. The church, the black church, is one of the most wealthiest institutions in America. The black church is one of the most wealthiest institutions in America. It's got two problems. They won't come together because everybody wants to be in charge. Everybody wants to be the pastor. That's the first problem. The second problem is they don't realize, it is maybe a handful out of thousands of churches, they don't realize that they only operate off of one revenue stream. One revenue stream. One revenue stream. Pointing question, what you were talking about when you spoke about the house that the brother, the 3-flat building he did on the west side, and he's living. They're paying him to live in his property that he owns. They're paying him. Okay. Donald Trump, father, developed over 200 revenue streams for his children.
Right.
And all he did was, they owned this property, he took and gave this son or this daughter a business to supply janitorial supplies.
Mm-hmm.
Then he took that daughter, that son, to supply the janitorial supplies that were going to be sold to him to sell to them. And he just stacked it. And he duplicated over 200 revenue streams instead of just one revenue stream. That's the problem with the black church. If it could ever come together, that's why I was shaking my head when you were talking, because, man, if we could ever come together. They got us focused on, like you said, politics.
Yep.
They got us focused on politics. They got us focused on looking at the mayor. The only time the mayor comes to our community and to our churches is when he needs votes at election time. And he don't go to the white church, he don't go to the Lutheran church, he don't go to the Methodist church, he don't go to the Catholic church. He cannot stand in those pulpits and speak about bringing some votes to him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he just can't do it. But the only one he can do it in is the black church.
Yeah.
And they all know it. Even all the way up from the mayor, the local politician, the state representative, all the way up to the president, the man or woman that's running for president of the United States. They utilize the black church nationwide because they know the power that lies in that church.
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
Is that okay? That is true. Everything you stated. And the reality of that, Roger, is that if it's their purpose to limit our ability to rise, then their investment in the church is only made because they see you as an object of our dissent.
Mm-hmm.
They see the church as an institution that's keeping us down. It's the only reason they will continue to invest in you like that without knowing that you don't have the practical means to make good with that money. They know you're not a businessman. They're going around the businessman and coming back to you because the businessman is in your congregation and respecting your opinion.
Right. That's right.
Unity is not always about us all agreeing. And that's, I think, a big problem with the idea of unity. Everybody in this room don't have to agree, but what we can agree to do is stay out of each other's way.
That's right.
And we can also agree to something as simple as this, to take a look at what you're doing, even if you're not my guy. You talk about economic development, I need to take a serious look as to whether what you have or not is real. It is the honeybee method. The weed is there. I don't want the weed, I just want the nectar from the weed. I'll leave what I don't need behind.
Yeah.
But I need to engage in an unfriendly environment to get what I need and get out of the way. And that's how we need to engage each other. So even if I'm not a follower of what you teach spiritually, I can take what you offer of substance and take that little bit for myself and stay out of your way and let my unity be expressed by a lack of dissent between us.
That's good.
I got a big question. Hopefully you can answer all the questions in it.
Yes, sir.
Let me give you a forefront. So there's a big lot across from our church. I've been pastoring 10 years in my area. And I've made plans and had some blueprints drawn up for the vacant lot across from our church to bring some economic development, some jobs, things like that. How does the church, first of all, get in the room, even though I'm tight with my alderman, I hope, how do we as the church get to the table, and what do we say at the table, at the table, and then if we're doing crowdfunding or equity funding within the folks within our community, how do we explain to them how they'll get a return on their investment?
Right. So, is that everything you want to ask?
Yeah, right now.
Okay, I'll start with those. So, teaching people about this is something that I think needs to be done in groups, where everybody is here, we can talk through the examples, we can explain the law, we can remove the barriers to mistrust that exists within us, right? Because we've all had that block club, investment club that okay, we all gonna put in some money about some property. And the first question anybody asks, who's gonna hold the money? And how stable is his household? Is his bills paid? You know what I'm saying? And if we all got the same struggle, then that becomes a tough question. This law gives us an opportunity to let the state be that intercessor, that intermediary, where everything kind of goes back and forth between them. So it helps to eliminate that as a barrier for us. So I would talk about that in groups of people where we can all validate that together, and folks don't have to feel like they're on an island left to their own understanding about things that they're not so familiar with. That's how we do that.
Here's the next question. Heard Bishop Phillips say the black church is one of the wealthiest things, but the individual local church is not. So how does the individual local church, which is feeding my next question, how does the individual local church find leverage when they don't have that income?
That's right.
And that question will lead to the other question is, how can a fellowship such as New Century help do something like that? Because we are a group of pastors, or group of churches that can come together and strengthen it.
We do the thing, the answer to everything you lies in is in that seal, right there. This word, fellowship. I call it networking. It's just people with a common interest coming together in a room. So what you do is you say this, as the apostle, you're not the businessman, but you have a team of people that serve as whether they're advisors in some capacity, you would have people, say like myself, and I can help to connect you with people like that, but other people who have real development capabilities, who know what to build on the vacant lots in your community, who can put together the plans to do things like that. And you, the church, may not have the income, but the reason why the politician is coming in there, he's not trying to leverage the power of the church as an entity, it's the individual members where the power lies. It's in their incomes where the power in this lies. So we're not asking the church to put its money into the vacant lot property. It's the members of the church that would do that. The church is a messenger and a validator of that project, and a guide and a guidance in the project, and a supporter of it. So at the end of the day, when we all standing there taking a picture, it's real. When we all got the shovels in our hand, you know, with the little hats on, it's real because everybody is invested in it. Not, oh, the mayor came down and we had this ribbon cut for some more stuff that we don't own.
My God.
Right? It's got teeth in it now. Right? So, and the churches, again, the churches, the way that you engage is through the validation of this, the study and validation, present that. But the idea is for you to not be responsible for the development of the ideas that spring forth from it, because that ain't your lane.
Right.
Keep teaching. Keep teaching and use this as a platform to teach more, to inspire and encourage people, and to let the people who don't have hope know that there is hope. Because there's always hope in any situation where you can do it yourself. I'll always bet on myself, right? We'll always bet on ourselves, and we'll feel better. Everybody will be more encouraged when they know that this opportunity exists. They'll start to attack it properly. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Listen, for the sake of time, I want to let everybody know that the lunch is here and we want to stay on schedule. So we certainly want to thank Mr. Hirsch for coming today.